I want to welcome everyone to another talk in our ongoing alumni leadership lecture series. I don't know if it's a coincidence or what, but most of our alumni leaders seem to be entrepreneurs. So we have one more in that series, Bala Parthasarathy, who is from the 1988 batch. And I don't know if that's another coincidence, but most of the successful entrepreneurs appear to have a chemical engineering background.
Go chemical engineering.
So there must be something in the chemical engineering curriculum that prepares one to be a successful entrepreneur. I'm a chemical engineer, but I don't have an entrepreneurial bone in my body, so I guess I must be the exception. We are very pleased to have Bala here to talk to you. I hope you have all seen his very interesting bio that I had circulated, so I'm not going to go through it again. Suffice it to say that he is an alumnus, a serial entrepreneur, and an avid traveler. Bala.
Thanks, Dr. Nagarajan. Can you all hear me? Share this mic? This mic is okay. Okay. So I don't know if there's a selection bias here. You know, people who show here, I think show up here, Dr. Nagarajan said, seem to be entrepreneurs. I think it's more like people who are jobless showing up here, and chemical engineers are, chemical engineering IIT, at least in those days, used to be sort of extra joblessness. So I think I'm going to just stay here for a couple of weeks. So let me quickly introduce myself. I don't want to repeat whatever is there in the brochure for those of you who looked at it. Before I get started, though, I want to just take a quick sort of pulse. How many of you here have sort of a semi-serious interest in entrepreneurship? I presume it's many of you, all of you, or most of you. Entrepreneurship, okay. Cool. So for the rest of you, I'm hoping to convince you to join. So by the end of the session, I want everybody's hands up here. So, so another quick question. Just want to get a quick sense of the GPA here. So how many of you are like 9+? Okay. So there are 3 or 4 of my classmates, so they're not allowed to vote on anything, and their GPA is all below, at my level. So 9 + 1, 2, okay. 8 to 9? All right, okay. All right, so most of the talk is for the rest of you. So, I want to tell you just a little bit about myself, which might or might not be there in the brochure. So, like you and like those 4 jobless guys out there, we all passed out in 88, 89. I passed out in 88, and those days, going abroad was the common thing to do. Apparently now 60% of the students actually stay here and get a real job. So we actually went abroad, did my master's, and by somewhat of a pure luck, I ended up in the Silicon Valley. Actually, all pure luck. And being in the valley in those days, you had to start a company. The peer pressure was too much. So I not only started a company, I also joined a very early stage startup, and I was kind of doing both jobs on the side. Luckily, the company I joined went IPO, which means a lot of money. So I then took that money and quit. And in the meanwhile, I kind of negotiated a 3-month sabbatical. I traveled around South America, came back, and did that. My first company, sold it off in 97. And then decided that I should really tool around. So I took a year off this time. Went everywhere, Africa, Middle East, all over the place. Came back, started a 3rd company, and that company was a total disaster. Like a miserable disaster. 3 other IITians and myself, and very, very high degrees, Harvard MBA. One guy was Harvard MBA. The other 2 guys were, good guys. And we had all done successful startups before, but the company totally blew up. 6 months later, we shut it down, which turned out to be a blessing in disguise. because the fourth company was Snapfish, and Snapfish was started in '99, and the peak of the dot-com boom. So this is like the day when you could call a company donkey.com and you can do IPO the next month, right? So just anything with a .com went. So great idea. Four of us. One of them was my classmate at IIT, IIT Madras, and and then the other two guys were his friends from Harvard. So he had gone to Harvard. And when we started the company, we were like sort of the 127th company in the photo space, right? I mean, so talk about being like last to market. We were like the last to market. And again, sort of luck, helped us in a very strange way. In the 2000, the dot-com bubble burst, right? So all the companies went bankrupt. But luckily, we had just raised money, and we couldn't spend it fast enough by just a pure coincidence. So when all the companies went bankrupt, there were only like 3 or 4 companies standing. So we had to fire like 80% of the people, lay off 80% of the people. But it was a very turning point in our company and in my life personally, because now we actually had to turn the company and make it a real business. So we turned, and luckily also for us, the digital photography started taking off. So we grew that company from literally 0 in revenue, and today it does about $500 million in revenue in over 22 countries. So it's by far the largest company in the space, highly profitable. And along the way, we sold it to HP in 2005. And they wanted me to go and start the company in other countries. So I started the business in all over Asia and Europe. And the commute from California was killing me. So that's what got me to India. And again, I took a sort of a 3-month detour and I went all around Russia and Eastern Europe, which I had not seen before. Landed up in India, live in Bangalore now. And then 2010, HP was the largest company I've ever worked for, right? I mean, every other company I worked for, I either started or, was under, 100 people. And HP was like 100,000 people. So it was kind of ridiculous to work for like such a big bureaucracy. And also having this midlife crisis, what do you want to do in life? And these are sort of good problems to have, right? You're like sitting down and thinking, what am I doing? I should do good for the society, those kind of days. Fortunately or unfortunately for me, I walked into the wrong guy's house to get advice. So his name is Mr. Nandan Nilekani. I'm sure all of you know him, founder of Infosys. And I walked into his house and said, Nandan, here's what I'm thinking. What should I do? Nandan is one of the best salesmen I've ever met in my life. So he's like, Bala, very good. You kind of listen. And by the time I walked out of his house, I had resigned in HP. And I volunteered, I thought HP was a big company. Now he volunteered for the government of India, right? So talk about like going from a big bureaucracy to a humongous bureaucracy. So that's what I did. So I worked for Nandan for a year and a half at UID, Aadhaar project. I was taking care of sort of the business end of things and evangelizing, and it was a very different experience for me. Went to villages and Marxist areas and states which had not even existed when I left India. And I didn't know that Chhattisgarh was a state. I randomly ended up there in some Naxal area. But it was all very good experience. I mean, for me, it was very different. And last year, I quit and I started Angel Prime. Angel Prime is a sort of an incubator entrepreneur. So I'm still not clear whether I'm very confused. I'm not sure I'm an investor or I'm an entrepreneur. So I'm trying to be both, which is what Angel Prime is about. We are a fund, so we fund startups. We also do a lot of mentoring and nurturing of entrepreneurs. And so that's what I do now. So it's kind of a short / long story, depending on how awake you are. So by the way, I should warn you that I haven't slept in 4 days. So by the end of this talk, either you are sleeping or I'm sleeping. But and if we are both not sleeping, I think it's a success. So I want to start with sort of my topic here. So definitive guide to Nirvana. So this place, it's an aerial photo. It's taken from a seaplane. This place is called, island called Bora Bora. Does anybody know where Bora Bora is? I hear. Go on. You said you knew where Bora Bora is. Pretty close. Pretty close. You're right in the right ocean. French Polynesia, awesome. Tahiti, it's more commonly known. The reason I picked this photo is that when I was taking this photo, I had sort of a aha moment. I said, you know what, my life is pretty good. I was on the seaplane, and Bora Bora is to me, and I've been to a lot of places, as you know, it's one of the most beautiful places I've been to, right? It's a volcano, it's like this ocean, blue ocean, just beautiful islands, lovely people. And I was taking this photo and I thought, you know what, life is pretty good. And to me, it was kind of like a nirvana moment. And then I sort of started looking back a little bit, and at my stage in life, you kind of overthink a lot of things. So think, what are the things that helped me to get to sort of at least this moment? And that's what this presentation is about. Now, I have a very kind of skewed point of view, which I must warn you, and you will see that as I go along. And my point of view is, tied to my whole life as an entrepreneur, which I want to share with you, for you to have moments like this, right? That's kind of like the idea. So, so let's go to the theme of sort of ladders, right? So, like us, you guys are very smart, or we like to think we're very smart. I don't know. Sundar here, might not disagree with me. But the point is this, right? All your life you've been sort of told to climb some ladder, right? You are like, okay, study for the 10th. Okay, finish 10th, study for the 12th, and prepare for IIT. And obviously getting here is not easy. You must have slogged. And I'm told that the slog that we went through, was nothing compared to what you must have gone through, right? We would have probably all failed the JEE right now. At least I'm sure I will. And so you've all gotten here. Now you are, studying. Some of you have a 9.0 GPA. You need to study. So you always kind of, so far, know what the next step is. That you keep on climb. The question is that the right thing to do, and what next? Now, I think until IIT, it's probably, it served you well. Being here is a pretty damn good thing, right? The question is this the right thing to do going forward? What are you going to climb to next? What are the ladders left for you, right? So one could be, entrepreneurship, which is what I'm going to talk about. There is always research and teaching. I know nothing about it, not qualified to talk about it. There is, of course, taking up a job and sort of climbing the corporate ladder, which I do know something about, and I think it's a dumb idea. You should not do that. And I hope I'll convince you about that by the end of this talk. But there's a larger point here, like what is the end game? What should you shoot for, right? And as you will find out, it's not obvious. It's not obvious beyond IIT, sort of what is like the next thing to shoot for. And I promise that I'll keep this slide as like my only sort of very high level philosophical slide here. But to me, right, so to like the five of us who are, 25 years ahead of you, or Professor Nagarajan here who was even 5 years ahead of us, what is the end game? What is like the right thing to do in the end? To me, the right job, and this is not my list, by the way. This is fairly well known. Is that you want to have a job where you have fair level of autonomy, right? So you know what autonomy is. Right? Autonomy is like not somebody looking over you, micromanaging you, telling you what to do, and you have some freedom. Any job where you don't have that is going to suck, believe me. Right? The second part you need to have is some level of complexity. Right? You guys are all smart, and you can't just be doing sort of mundane stuff. It'll just bore you out of your mind. And luckily for you, this problem is not going to be there in your career for the most part, because most of the jobs you take will be complex, but that's a very important one. But the last one is not at all important. I mean, not at all obvious. Whatever job you do, the amount of slog you put in and the amount of reward you get has got to be somewhat proportional. And this definitely is a problem in large companies, right? So you might be working very, very hard,